Which war did you serve in?
World War II, and I stayed in the reserve, and then 1951, April 1951, I was called back for the Korean service. And I'll tell you that how I received my call, speaking with my mother at night over the phone. She said, Sonny, you have a letter here from the Navy Department. Of course, I was in New York, and she's up in Worcester. And I said, okay, open it up and see what they want. And she read it, that I was being recalled to active duty, and I was to report to the naval station up there at in Boston, at the Fargo building, on, I forget what day it was, but it was sometime in April of 1951. And I said, Mom, send it down to me. And I said, I'm not, since I've been down here since 1948, August of 1948, I'll see if I can, I no longer kept up active duty, any reserve, that I did not go on to any meetings at all. So I've been on the inactive list, and I'll see if I can be out of it. So she sent it down to me, and I wrote a letter telling them my status, the length of time I was down here in New York, and I don't see how I could be recalled now. And I sent it back up to the Fargo building and in Boston, and I received a letter subsequently in answer that if I did not adhere to this request, that they would send the forms down to the Naval District in New York City there, and I would be called from there. I was in the communication of which they were in need of at the time. So I said, I called my mother and I said, Mom, I can't get out of it. I'll go back. I'll go up there. I'll just have to tell my boss. I'll show them the papers, and I'll tell them I'm going back up, and I'll go out of Massachusetts. And my reason for doing it that way, rather than go out of New York, was because for the World War II action and duty, the federal government gave the veterans that were overseas for a certain period of time a $300 bonus. And the state of Massachusetts matched it, being overseas. And for the period of time that I was, I got a $300 bonus from them also.
So you had $600?
Right. So I had $600. You would get only $100 if you did a certain amount, and if you went overseas, you got an additional 100. So that's how I got the 300. And so that is what I did. I showed it to my boss, and they said, all right. And they let me go. And at that time, it was that you were leaving your job. They had to keep a spot for you when you came back.
By law.
By law. It was a federal law that you were to go back to your job. So that is why I left. And I went down to the Fargo building in Boston, and I received my orders there. And I was supposed to, I was to go down to Norfolk, Virginia, to the base there, and I was going to be, when I got down there, further orders were, I had to go to teletype school now.
Okay.
This was something new, because some of the larger ships were equipped with teletypes. So I had to go for 2 weeks of teletype training. Upon the completion of that, I received the orders in that I was to report to this ship, the USS Pawcatuck, AO-108. The AO is an auxiliary oiler, refuel the ships at sea. When I did get on board, I was introduced around, and subsequently it was just within a day or two then that I was in with the group. I made the third man there. Really, I was the fourth man, because the fellow that was over the other two, he was going to be transferred because he had been on there for some time. A few days after I was on there, there's a clipboard on the side. And there was a lull in the activity, so I took the clipboard just for the sake of being nosy. I started going through the old messages that had come in. We take so many messages, and we clip that off, and we put it on the clipboard. It doesn't pertain to us, but it goes there. They have to be saved. So I started going back over the previous messages. Lo and behold, I see it, and here's plain language was encoded. At that time, as long as it's not wartime, and it pertained to individuals on board ship, I found that I was assigned to the USS Rehoboth up in Woods Hole in Massachusetts. I got a hold of the book. I found the USS Rehoboth, Rehoboth. It's a U.S. geodetic ship that goes out, takes care of the markers in the water denoting if it's shallow or if it's deep. These are buoys that marking channels to go in to report.
Right.
So that I would have been only once you get into the Woods Hole is just south of Cape Cod. It's part of Cape Cod. And I could have been very close to home.
Right.
I says to myself, I got screwed. Somebody must have been close. There was another radio man, probably the same thing, called back to, but he knew the yeoman or whoever was in the office. I don't want to go on a tanker. Get me on something else.
So they took a position that you had?
So I was down in Norfolk, Virginia, on a ship that out at sea.
Right.
I mulled it in my head. Should I go to the executive officer and tell him I'm on here in opposition to
Your orders.
the message that came in,
Right.
that I was to be up in Woods Hole? Well, the geodetic ship is a ship that is about as long as this house, whereas the auxiliary oiler is 4 times the length of it. And you're at sea. You get around, you see more than what this little geodetic ship will do. So I bit my tongue and I took it. So anyway, we sailed. We operated out of Norfolk, Virginia. And every so often we would go from Norfolk, we'd go off of Norfolk, we'd go off to the coast and fuel some of the other Navy ships. We'd go down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, fuel ships on the way down. The ships are always exercising. Always
Maneuvers?
always keeping busy. Men make sure that they knew what they were doing all the time. So you go down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. We'd pull in there for a week probably. We go ashore. And we just wait for orders to move out. Then maybe 8 or 10 ships would move out. We go out and do some maneuvers, and we go along with them. Or we would follow out later on. And we would fuel them. So that they're always constantly practicing.
When you fueled the ship, how long did it take and how many gallons of fuel were you?
Oh, that varied. Whether you have a destroyer coming alongside of you, whatever their needs were, you probably could probably fuel that ship in an hour and a half.
It goes through a pumping system?
They have these hoses, and they have these large cranes. I'd have to show you pictures of how it's done. And they throw a monkey fist across to the ship, which is, and you have like a clothesline line, okay? Then that is attached to a heavier line. I'm calling a rope. You don't say rope, you say a line. Then you have probably a 6-inch diameter hose that is wrapped around. The line is wrapped around, and they pull it, and you have a boom on board. Then that you put out that boom, and that is the line is hanging, but you put that out, and the ship is coming alongside you. They try to get, well, like from where the Panda is there, probably they could reach out about halfway over, but then the men on there, they're pulling the line over, and then they hook it up. They would hook that nozzle into where the entrance is to take in the oil, and that boom is hanging there all the time with that line, or else they would bring it back, and then there was just a line to be hanging there. And the two ships are going along side by side.
So you're moving.
They're continually moving. Now, and the smaller ship, at times it would be difficult if it is rough, if the water is rough.
Right. Unimagine.
Where we are sitting low, we're sitting low in the water, but that little thing is bobbing away if it's rough. If it's not, we can just glide along nice. And then when they have the required amount that they needed, signals are given back and forth, and then they just disconnect, and we bring the boom back over on here. But
that's pretty interesting. Delicate though.
And we fuel destroyer escorts, destroyers, aircraft carriers. We fuel the Coral Sea, what was another one? Oh, I forgot the names of some of these big aircraft carriers, and they are much larger and longer, and they would either want fuel for the ship themselves, or they might want fuel for the planes.
Okay.
So we carried aviation fuel as well.
Which is higher octane.
So then that was a different hose, and came out of a different sink.
So you carry multiple fuels then?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, if you don't mind me asking, I just want to I just would like you to state a couple things for our record here. Could you tell me, again, for our records, what your branch of service was? The U.S. Navy, correct?
Yeah, U.S. Navy, right.
And
Now, during wartime, this was the amphibious force.
Amphibious force?
Right.
Okay.
That's why you'll see I had a picture there that the amphibious was different, a different badge.
But I'd just like to make that clear for the
amphibious. That's where you're taken and you're going up onto the shore. We were the largest ship that would go up on the shore, lay down open up the bow doors, leave the ramp down so that the tanks, the trucks pulling the guns and fuel, pulling fuel tanks after them. We even took a couple of Piper Cubs and take them out because they were used for flying overhead then. They were directing where the guns should be firing.
Right.
If they could see the enemy when they were up there, they could see where the enemy was. They'd have radio contact with the ground forces. They were spotters.
Right. And this was the ship that had the tunes in it.
The LST.
The LST.
This is the LST.
And again, I also would like you to state for the record what your highest rank was.
Second class radioman. You have the strikers, and then you have the third class, and then you have the second class.
Right.
And then it'd be first class, and then chief.
Right. And also for our records, briefly, could you tell me the locations that you served, starting, from first?
You want to give me that? It was the Southwest Pacific. Oh, well, here, let's pull up. Where's this one there that had all the? Where was the mileage?
Oh, the sheet.
This was the Southwest Pacific.
Okay.
The Philippine Islands, Borneo, and we were getting ready for Japan. We were up in Leyte Harbor awaiting our turn to load up because we were going to go into Japan. And that's when I received orders and I was asked if I wanted to transfer. So I took it from one LST to the other.
What was the LST number of your first ship and then the LST number of your second?
The 591.
591.
That's why I
remember.
Right, and on to the 932.
932. And again, we'll include that in your collection, your two writings, your experiences from both ships that you had published. We'll
Right,
include that in
right,
there, so.
right. Because we were asked because this was put into this. This was the fourth volume, I think, of the LST books that were published in Connecticut.
Right. Well, I'll include that so anybody listening to the interview could also check out your documents and read further what you have published.
And so, as you can see here, the various the Southwest Pacific, and we started out. We took when I got on the ship in August 23rd of 1944. In Evansville, Indiana. That's where the ship was built. In Indiana. And that's where I got on it. And we took it out of the shipyard under the direction of a Coast Guard crew. And we went down the Ohio River, down into the Mississippi. We went down to, you got this Evansville, Indiana as the shipyard, right? So we took it down to NOLA. Now NOLA is New Orleans, Louisiana. You see how it's spelled here, the NOLA. And we got down there, and we had to go to different ports down along there to load up with food and such. And then we had about, let me see, we had 2 days of learning how to operate the ship up onto the beach. And this was down at Pensacola, Florida. Right. It wasn't too far from the Air Force Base down there.
Right.
And that's where we would practice. Go out
In the Gulf?
in the Gulf of Mexico. Right. So we had to practice this for a couple of days, learning how to beach and operate the ship when they would drop the ramp out, drop the ramp down, and all. And then we came back in, and so this was the time from the 6th of September until the 28th of where we picked up food and other whatever we needed. Then we went to Gulfport, Mississippi, and we picked up ammunition and fuel.
How many gallons, thousands of gallons of fuel did you
I have no idea.
And it had to have been a
That
massive amount.
that was nothing that we were. Well, here, let me see.
This was on the LST, so you weren't a refuel.
I can tell you then. Oh, then we had to. We loaded a LCT on our deck. That's a landing craft tank.
Onto your deck?
Onto our top deck.
Wow.
And this is a plus we took 87,780 gallons of cargo oil in our ballast tanks, and we loaded 400 tons of GSK. That's a general, I don't know what the SK is, but stores on the tank deck. That was down the tank deck that we loaded this to take over and leave off in our first stop over there in Espiritu Santos. We went down to Gulfport, Mississippi, and then from there we went to Coco Solo, Panama, and we waited our turn to go through the Panama Canal. And that took us from we were there the 8th of October, and to the 10th of October we left. We went through the Panama Canal, and our next stop was in Espiritu Santos, and that is an island of where we sailed with one other LST.
Do you remember the number of the LST that you sailed alongside?
He doesn't have it here. I can't remember. I don't know. Where's my little green book?
Just right here. Now, the information on there, where did you get that from? Is it just documented it over time?
Being the ears of the ship, you know, And I'd have to, in order to get out of my little cubicle, you go through the a hallway of where the maps are, where the quartermasters are. Where are we? Where we're going?
So you
Yeah.
have access to the
Yeah.
information.
So I'd have access.
That's good.
I'd have access to the.
Some money, huh? It's actually printed on decent paper. Similar to American currency, huh? Now, while you're looking through that, you think you can answer a couple more questions for me, just stating it for
All
the
right.
record?
Right.
At the time when you got into the service, you enlisted.
I read, before, maybe I should have given you a little preface before then.
Fine, you can explain that now.
And when I graduated from high school, there was a fellow that had to sign up for the selective service. He was 18 years old. We were in grammar school together, and when we were in the 4th grade, I was like a tutor to him. I was a pretty good reader, and I don't know if they do it now in school or not. Those that could read and understand what you were reading, we would have different books at English lesson now. All right, we have a story. All right, close your books now. Well, we read a page or two. Close your books. What did we read about? What did we read about? George, Richard, Edgar, Rita, Claire. Tell me what we read about.
You remember all
All right.
this, huh?
All right. You get up. Well, who was it? Tom. He was, whatever actions he did and all, whatever the story was, he went so and so and he did this and that. All right, okay. All right. Okay, let's continue. Close your book, open up the book and go back. Continue on. Sometimes picked up Francis. What did we? I don't know, I forgot. Well, some of them were slow readers, some of them didn't catch everything. Okay. George, take Francis, go into the boys' coat room. I want him to read 10 pages to you and ask him what he read. Okay. I had a good memory and all.
Yeah.
I used to be in a lot of plays.
Oh yeah? You did some acting?
This was in the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, 6th grade.
Yeah.
We had plays and all. And I was always in them. I had good memory. I'd go home and I'd have to memorize the different parts and everything else. And so, all right, this was in the 4th grade. George, take Francis, go into the coat room, and read the pages up to. She gave me the number of pages to read, and ask him. So that's what I would do with him. He was bigger than I was and all. And when we got into high school, he was on the football team, the baseball team, basketball team. I was on the basketball team. I got knocked on my ass more times, and I quit. I was small. I was the smallest one. I was the smallest one in the class. You line us up in class in height. If we were the first ones into something, and I'd be the second one in. There was a girl, Rose Nolan. She was a cute little blonde. I was sweet on her. And if we turned around the other way, I would be the next to the last then, going anywheres. Yeah, you know, that's how we were lined up.
Right.
So anyway, I was the tutor to Francis.
Mm-hmm.
He'd read, and okay, close the book. What did you read? What did so and so do? Where did they go?
Yeah.
Who's with them? And so he would have to tell me, you know. So once in a while I'd have to remind him,
Yeah.
you know. But that was it.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, we get into high school. He was 18 years old. He had signed for our last year when the war started, when President Roosevelt, that day that the day that will live in infamy, when he declared war on Japan, we were all in one big classroom where they open up these folding doors. The four classes: freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. We're all into these two big rooms with the open doors, and somebody brought a radio in. Selective service, 18 years old, he had to sign up. He was called. We got into our senior year. He was called. So he had to leave.
Where did he go?
He came back. He went down to Louisiana. When his basic was through, he came back to see the teachers and to see us. And so he went to the different rooms and told us where he was. He was sent down to Louisiana, and he had, I think it was 10 weeks of basic training.
Was he in the infantry?
Marching. Everybody was everybody was in the infantry to learn how to shoot a gun and everything else, because, and unless you were a cook, you know, if you were a cook and you had to sign up, well, you go in the army and they know that you cooked meals, you cooked food. Well, then you'd be a chef. But if you were out one digging a ditch or something, if you ran equipment and everything else, well, they'd put you there. But first you had to have the basic training, learn how to march, learn how to salute, and all of this and that. You know?
Right.
So, but he came back to tell us that he was in Louisiana, sleeping in a tent on a cot. The rain poured through. The snakes are coming through the tent in the water. And I heard that. I don't want to go in the army.
Yeah.
And Anchors Away was a big movie at the time.
Anchors Away?
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Okay. And my dad and I saw it. I said, well, I'll go in the Navy. I don't want to go in the Army. So, enough with the snakes. So, when I graduated, I think it was I worked in the First National Store. When I turned 16, I got my Social Security, and I worked in the First National Store. I took the place of a fellow that turned 18 the year before, and he had to go. I took his place. Now, the First National Store is the precursor to Stop and Shop.
Same company?
It's owned by a company over in Holland. It's a Dutch-owned company.
Huh.
And I worked there in my junior year, my senior year. Had a manager. Just imagine myself. This is the time that there was no super. It's not a store like Stop and Shop is.
It's a market.
These were the markets where you're behind the counter and you had to go here. The customer comes in and they want a peck of potatoes. They want a dozen of oranges. They want a pound of butter. You can't have a pound of butter. We had to cut the butter in half because it was rationed,
Yeah.
and we could only get 60 pounds of butter in a week, and so we had a number of customers. We could only give them half a pound of butter.
Yeah.
We could give them a pound or a half a pound. There were certain other things too. We had the winter it was rationed. Sugar was rationed, and I forget, there were a number of other things. But anyway, the senior year, I had a manager. He had a car that had it was like a coupe. It had a trunk in it, so that you could lift up and you could have a spare seat. You ever see the old tight cars with the rumble seat?
Right.
So he took the rumble seat out, and he built a little box and fitted it into the rumble seat.
The trunk.
A little trunk, okay. So when the women would come in, women didn't drive cars at that time. They come in, and they had to walk some distance, come in and carry the packages home. Or they would make an order, and their husband would come in and pick it up, then take it home.
Mm-hmm.
But others, so this fellow, this manager, he would take an order, and when I would come in after school, after high school, I'd go home, drop off my books, grab a quick sandwich, I'd go down to the store.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be in there at 2:45. George, I'm going out and make a few deliveries. All right. So he had orders that I'd taken during the morning while I'm in school. He'd go out and put them in the trunk, and he'd go delivering them.
Right.
Well, I'd be there all afternoon by myself. We closed at 6 o'clock. 5 o'clock, Mr. Burns, the district manager from Somerville, Mass. That's the headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
Somerville, even for Stop and Shop.
Today.
Somerville.
Uh-huh.
And he'd come in, pick up the collections from yesterday. Any problems? You need this? You need that? How are things going? You should do this, or why don't you make a display of this, or make a display of that? When I'm not working, I do the display, make a display.
Mm-hmm.
He'd come in, and Joe isn't back yet. And here it is now, 4:30, 5 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
5:30, and no Joe. Where he come in? Whenever he came in, where's Joe? He went out to make some deliveries, Mr. Burns. Oh. So I'd be busy. He'd take off his jacket, put his hat and his coat over the side, and he'd help me.
Really?
He was the district manager.
Huh.
He had the district, Worcester was his district. He came in from Somerville, go to the different stores, pick up the receipts from yesterday,
Yeah.
and anything that needed to be done or something or whatever, he would carry it back to Somerville. All right? But he'd take the money, and his next stop was to the office in Somerville. He had to be there at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, whatever it was. So he'd see me working there. Sometimes it was almost close-up time, and I'd have to make up what's the bread list for tomorrow? What's the cake list? What's the pie list?
All the inventories?
I'd have to, what do we need for tomorrow? Because the truck was coming in, and it would stop, and we had a big curtain that we would drop down,
Right.
and padlocks on each corner, and there was the list of wants of what we need, and as far as we had to have fresh bread every day, and cake and pies and what we wanted on. So I'd have to make that out, you know. So Mr. Burns saw that. He says, "George, how you fixed about the service?" I said, "Well, I don't want to go in. I don't want to go into the Army. I'm going to try for the Navy." He says, "So now this is the end of July, almost the end of July." I said, "I'm going to try for the Navy." I said, and I'm going to be 18 in August, and I don't want to go in the Army." He said, "Well, if you don't go, you're going to take over the store."
Huh.
He says, "I saw Joe in the city yesterday. He knew the vehicle,
Yeah.
and there was one store at Rice Square when he was coming out, and he saw the vehicle go by. He saw Joe."
Yeah.
"What the hell? What's Joe doing in Worcester?"
Right.
"He's in Worcester?" "I don't know. He told me he took some orders out, Mr. Burns."
Yeah.
He passed by Rice Square yesterday when I came out.
Huh.
6 miles away. He's supposed to be in the store.
Right.
He's the manager.
Uh-huh.
He said, "I want to get this store. I want you to take over the management."
Yeah.
Well, I went down. My father took me down to Boston for the Coast Guard, and boy, you must be getting hungry. It took me down to Boston to the Coast Guard. Well, how old are you? I'm going to be 18 pretty soon. I'm 17 right now. And how much you weigh? Well, get on the scale there. You have to weigh 110 pounds, and we can take you. All right, step on the scale. 108 pounds.
So how did you gain the 2 pounds?
Mr. Willett, down at the end of the street here, there's a fruit and vegetable stand.
Mm-hmm.
Take them down and get some bananas, and get some water. Get a couple of quarts of water.
Yeah.
Have him drink the water and eat the bananas, and then come back. And if he gains the 2 pounds and he hits 110, we'll take him. Come on, Sonny. Let's go back home. I'm not coming down here 40 miles down to be told to give you water and bananas, and then come on, we're going back home. 40 miles back home. So the Coast Guard was out.
Yeah.
So about 3 or 4 weeks later, I said, I think I'll try for the Navy, see what's going to happen there.
Do you recall the date?
It had to be in July because it was before my 18th birthday. I was trying to do this before the 18th birthday.
Right.
So it had to be sometime in June. And anyway, I tried for the Navy. So they took me. They took me over to went to the federal building, and they told me you have to weigh 110 pounds
For the Navy.
for the Navy, and we can't take you here. You have to go to Springfield. That's where they'll do the examinations and all, and that's where you go from. So you have a little bag, a toilet bag, take your toilet articles and everything. I didn't shave at all, and but take something that you will need in case that they take you. Now, if you go, we'll give you a ticket to go on the train, put you on the train to Springfield. If you go, if you don't, they don't accept you. You have to pay your own way back home. So my mother and dad gave me money to come back home just in case. I went to Springfield. I went in right through.
Yeah. Over 110?
On July the 27th, I will faithfully, blah, 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 blah. I'm in the Navy now.
What was going through your head at the time? You're finally in the service.
I don't know what was going through my head.
Were you excited? Were you nervous?
I was in with a bunch of guys that were big and tall and fat and small and everything. They were older than I was, and I was a kid, you know. They were all smokers and everything else, and that's I started smoking when they put me on the train. When I went up to Lake Sampson, in the Finger Lake section.
Upstate New York.
New York.
Yeah,
Apple and wine country.
Right.
Lake Seneca, right on Lake Seneca, Lake Sampson, the Naval Naval Base.
I'm from, I used to live in Auburn, New York, which is outside of Syracuse. That's in that vicinity of the Finger Lake.
So that's where I went for 7 weeks.
Great. Now, could you tell me about your first days in service?
My first days in service.
Yeah, what was that like?
First days in service. Tell me about the nights in the bunk. Well, you go through with a mattress cover. You know, they give you a mattress. The mattress is about that. You know, we all slept in barracks. You know, and so you had a double cot, upper and lower. And you had this mattress, and you had a sheet, and you had to drag this sheet along with you. You know, what size, and they throw the t-shirts in, they throw the shorts in, you know, and throw the socks in, and all, and then you get your shoes, the last ones, you know. You had low shoes and you had high shoes, you know, and a watch hat, the black watch hat, the black sweater, and the dungarees, and the pants. You have 2 pairs of pants, and the jumper. You had a dress and you had an undressed jumper. That's a dress jumper. It has the stripes on it. The undressed jumper is just a black lapel that hangs down the back. And so we get there, and so where do you want to sleep? Well, the guy, you grab a bunk, whichever bunk you come to, you either take the bottom or you take the top. 9 o'clock, well, we had our food at certain times, and they showed us where the toilets and the washrooms and everything was. And then we have the master at arms, the chief, or the petty officer. All right, here are the rules. And he laid down the rules. At 9 o'clock, the lights would go out. There's no talking, nothing. Quiet, silence. The lights went out at 9 o'clock. Meow. Meow. Ruff, ruff. You're just out here, animals. Somebody starts in with a joke.
So the guys were all joking around at night?
First thing you know, all the laughing starts going. You know, it just starts in a joke. You know, and it required an answer from somebody. Somebody would give them an answer, you know. First thing you know, the lights go on. Out of your bunks. Your dungarees, your high cuts, and your watch hat outside the barracks. 5 minutes. No fooling around. Get out there and line.
Yeah. So you guys probably started moving, huh?
All right. Around the track. What is that, a 3/4 mile track?
Yeah.
Run. Any laughing, we had to go again.
Oh, jeez.
Talk about punishment. I said, these bastards. They're all older than I am. They don't listen to orders. They don't follow orders. Around the track again. Oh, and this is 9:30, 9:45, running around out there, pitch dark.
No lights.
There's no lights.
Do you remember your instructors, what they were saying? Any names? Or?
Oh, I can't remember. There's one guy that they called Hitler. The chief petty officer. He was strict. Oh, he was strict.
Yeah.
He was strict. But his being strict, he had a group, and now these were two. This was a double barracks. They had the lower, 110 men downstairs, 110 men upstairs.
Yeah.
But this other barracks, each one had a petty officer in charge. But this one, he was strict. And the ones that did the best marching out there, they got to go into Geneva.
Geneva, yeah.
For a liberty,
Uh-huh.
an 8-hour liberty.
Little R&R.
Yeah, rest, you know, go in and get a beer and go do a movie or something like that, you know.
So I bet you some of these guys got kind of plastered.
I don't know what they did, but if they got plastered, they got punishment if they weren't on the bus back.
Right.
You know, if they missed the bus, something, you know, they were AWOL.
Yeah.
But these guys, they're in their 20s and their 30s, you know, married and unmarried, you know, and here I am, just a little kid, a little
110 pounder.
And I think of it, these shits, why don't they shut their mouth and when they're told to sleep, go to sleep. Yeah. The first night wasn't enough, they had to do it another night again.
Mm-hmm.
How many nights we did that, and that first week, it was unbelievable.
Huh.
and then we had to, or if we didn't run, get out there and was exercise, up and down, or do the squats, up and down, go down, put your hands in the hip, go down, up and down, and everything, you know. Every damn thing. I says, and these guys are all older than me. Why the hell don't they do what they're told? I was getting punished for them.
Because they weren't listening.
You know.
How did you get through it? Just
I just shut my mouth, just shut my mouth and do what I'm told. Eventually they did smarten up, when they found out, that the other barracks, they got an 8-hour liberty into Geneva. Saturday they could go into Geneva. And here we had to stay right here, and we had to do our wash. We had to wash our clothes out there and hang them up to dry and everything else. And then you just hope that nobody stole anything either. Like we had aboard ship, a guy was
commodities on there.
Aboard the ship. We had a fellow there that was he was wearing the captain's underclothes.
Stole the clothes?
That's another thing. We had to our names were on stencil on our T-shirts and on our shorts, on your socks, on our hat. We had a stencil with our name, and we had to do that.
Was your rank on there as well?
No, we didn't have any rank.
No. As a recruit.
No, we didn't have any rank.
All
right. We were just in there. We're seamen. That's all. We're in the Navy. All right. So the only thing that they didn't give us was a mop or soap. That was always in the barracks, and that was it.
But after boot camp, where did you go?
So that was boot camp. Then we got home. It was 7 weeks boot camp and 7 days leave.
7 days leave. So you went back home?
I went home.
What did you do on those 7 days off?
Just go home, and it was nothing but be with my parents and my brothers and sister. That's all. I didn't do anything, or go visit an aunt and uncle. Come on, we show that we have a sailor in the family. We go see Rita, we go see Uncle Joe, we go see, we go to Grandma and Grandpa, and that was it.
Right.
So then, back to OGU, the outgoing unit. So when we were in there, that first week, we went through a battery of tests. Well, they, what did you do in civilian life? Well, I was an electrician. I was a cook. I was a baker. I did this. I did that. I was a truck driver. So they would be filling those slots that they could take people that had some knowledge of.
Right.
Now,
it's basically like an aptitude test to find out what you can do.
What did I do? I worked in a grocery store.
You manage a store.
I could have had the management,
Did you tell them that?
There's one other store and another store. I told them that I worked in. I told them that I worked in the First National Store, and if I didn't come in the Navy, that I could be the manager of it.
Yeah.
But that went in.
Yeah. They
this.
Probably heard a lot of stuff from
this was they hear all these things,
Yeah.
So, what do you want to go? You want to go into school or what? I said, well, I worked in a store. If I didn't come in the Navy, I could be the manager of a store, a First National Store. I said, so put me down for a storekeeper, or well, in high school, I kind of liked the thing in science that was about radios. I like to be a radio man, you know, so I thought I was going to get the electrical stuff, you know, how to put a radio together and everything else. And what was the other one? I forgot what my third one was. Anyway, got out 7 days boot camp, go home for 7 days, come back, and hung around for a couple of days. And you go over and you check the list of your name and where you go or what you're going to do. Oh, I'm in radio school. All right. So I go and I check into for that, find out where and what I go. All right. They give me a ticket and all, and I think a couple others myself, and they put us on the train, and we go down to Bedford Springs, Pennsylvania.
That's why I saw the certificate. And that's where you graduated from radio man school?
Yeah. 5 months.
5 months?
It was 5 months there, but it took me 6 months, because while we were there, after classes, or in the morning, it was in the morning, 6 o'clock early, you're up and out of your room. There were 4 of us in my room. Was it 4 or 6? No, I think there were 6 of us. There were 4 other fellows and myself in the room. We had double bunk beds. We had we had 3 bunk beds. So there were 6 of us.
So did you have the same roommates the whole time in school?
In school, we went in as a class. We took over this hotel.
Yeah.
We all were assigned a room, and there were some rooms that were only 2 men in there. Others were 4, and the one I was in, there were 6 of us. There were 3 bunks. We had a lodge.
Was it nice?
And we had our own closet, our own area for our clothes and all. So it was nice.